Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I'm going to introduce myself and then I'm going to ask the rest of the financial team to introduce themselves and tell you what grant programs they cover. So I'm Courtney. I'm the grant manager at the commission. For any of you that don't know me, I oversee all the grant programs. If you have questions, email me. I've been here for 15 years now. So. I'm Ashley Wood. I mostly do the accounting for the commission, but I also have fire recovery, irrigation efficiencies, engineering and livestock.
I'm Nicole Boyce. I'm the contract with SCC, and so I don't know. Yes, yeah, I would work with you, but that will be your only direction.
I'm Christina Hurley. I'm a grant specialist. So get my feet wet. So be patient with me. And you will learn as soon as I'm learning exactly what I'm doing.
I'm Kate Hubermuth, also grant specialist. I handle prep, NRI, shellfish, RIT, early action, and flood vouchers, and also composite rates.
Yeah. So we're all going to tag team this through the presentation. So I'm going to start us off. And before I get started, I just want to say to everybody in there, thank you for your patience over these last years. I know, and your grace just well, we worked through, low staff, lots of new programs, lots of new money, lots of vouchers, working through creating new programs and getting them out to you. I know we've had some rough patches, but onward and upward. So today I'm going to run you through fiscal year end 23, and then we're going to start the new biennium. So, what?
Come in. Go. Enter. Next button. There it goes.
Okay, so the biggest day for you guys to remember, end of FY23 is June 30th. So all of your grant funds for every single program must be spent by June 30th. If you have any materials you've ordered, everything must be on hand by June 30th in order to request reimbursement from SCC. And that includes all of your, if you got additional year-end funding through the implementation grant, it includes those as well. All the efforts to it. Okay, so that's my biggest one for FY23. FY24 is the start, starts July 1st. And so it's the start of the new biennium and the new fiscal year. July 10th is your due date for all of your grant vouchers. Every grant program, July 10th is the due date.
What?
Yes. I ran through my presentation with my class.
That's a new day to me. I don't.
So please make your best effort. We literally have about 19 days from that day to close out all of our books with OFM. So it's really important we get all your grant vouchers July 10th. There are 3 things that you need on July 10th. You need your final grant vouchers. You need a closeout form for every grant. And for the ones that you see listed here, livestock TA, CTA, which is your implementation grant, riparian plant propagation, the RPP program, sustainable farms and fields, community wildfire resiliency, and the salmon recovery grant all require final reports this year. So you will have to submit a final report for each of those grants, your final grant voucher, and your closeout form by July 10th.
Not the whole food one. I don't remember what it's called.
No, food system support doesn't need one. And you can work on those now. So they're all live on our website. I've been sending them out in the Financial Times newsletter also, so you guys should have all the direct links to those reports in one place if you're looking for them too. And after we're done with the presentation, I'll send it to Corey. She'll put it on the WAVE, or give it to Andrew to put on the WAVE website. So you'll have all the links as well.
Can you put this back up just a second? What's done?
Yeah. Okay, so in addition to all of those forms, that closes out your FY23 grants. So because we're also starting the new biennium, we have a lot of new forms you guys are gonna have to fill out to get the new biennium started. Yeah. Oh, I skipped, sorry. So June 30th, each district manager should have gotten. Go back, sorry.
Did I jump you?
Each district manager should have gotten an email from Nicole. It had your master contracts in it. So those are due back directly to Nicole June 30th. So we can't even get started on your new FY24 grants until that master contract is signed and on file with Nicole. And then by the end of July, all of your FY24 grant addendums are due. And it's okay if you can't get them, you know, by the end of July, if you get them August 1st, depending on whatever your board meeting date is, we understand that. But just know that you cannot voucher your grants until we have an addendum established. So just remember that all of your addendums must be approved at a board meeting or by your board before you submit the online form to us.
What? Now?
Yes. Okay, so in addition to that, every biennium, we basically start over. So this biennium, you are going to have to submit new cost share forms. So you are going to submit your district cost share resolution rate. So that is what rate you're going to reimburse your landowners for cost share, 75%, 100%, whatever your board decides your rate is gonna be, you're gonna submit this form. It also will establish the landowner labor rate. So what rate you are going to pay your landowners for doing cost share. In addition to that, the authorized signature form must be updated for this biennium, even if there wasn't a change. The form is updated, so authorized signature forms are due. The original stays in your grant files, and you send us a copy to the SCC grant inbox.
What?
Is there a maximum landowner rate for the new fiscal year?
Yes, I will get there. Two sides, no one.
Can you go back, Brian?
Yep.
You could. Okay. So, the resolution rate and landowner rate, those automatically get sent, those don't have to go to the inbox, the grants inbox, only the authorized signature form.
That's a good question. We have an online form. It's a form stack form. It's on our website. So if you choose to use that format, it automatically comes to us. We'll file it and put it in your file. You can also submit a different version. You could submit your board resolution. And if you submit that way, then you do have to send it to the commission inbox.
And we need board resolution for that.
Yeah,
Board needs to do that.
yeah, your board needs to approve your rate.
So if we have the resolution, we use the online form that works, and it'll just send it to you, okay?
Yeah. There's a checkbox at the bottom that says, just like the addendum that says your board has approved it.
I'm so sorry, can you go back to slide? And what else was the board needed to approve?
Your addendum.
All the addendums, okay, great.
Okay, so thank you to anybody that took the time to read through the grants procedure manual and provide us comments. We had multiple comments come back to us, and it's really helpful to us. So I'm going to run down a brief overview of some of the biggest changes to the grants procedure manual that will start July 1st. So nothing I tell you right now is in effect. Finish off your FY23 grants, and everything will go into effect July 1st. So we officially approved the use of electronic signatures. Every district needs to have their own electronic signature policy on file at their district. But we now accept those. So if you sign your timesheets electronically, cost share electronically, they're all covered. We heard a lot of, go ahead.
They have to be Adobe.
You know, we just talked about this, and they don't actually have to be Adobe. Whatever software your district has approved for district use for electronic signature, that is what you can use. Okay, so we've heard a lot of feedback on this one and it's an equipment limit. So this biennium, the equipment has been limited at $1,000 for a single item you need pre-approval for. So going forward for the next biennium, that limit has been raised to $2,000. So anything under $2,000 for a single item under the implementation grant, I'm gonna say, it's not for shellfish or NRI or those grants. $2,000 is now your limit. And it's not cumulative, you had that question, so I wanna make sure everybody understands that. It's for a single item over $2,000.
Okay, so that's only for the implementation grant, not those other ones you mentioned, including sustainable farm field.
Yeah, it's, we'll make a table to make it easier,
Okay.
but yes, it will include sustainable farms and
Oh, it
fields.
does.
It will include the RCCC. It's not gonna include capital grants like shellfish
Okay.
or NRI, stuff like that. If you have questions, email me.
Yeah.
And I try and always prioritize those request emails.
And you said capital, so no prep, even though kind of one of those.
Prep is different. Prep does not allow a lot of things. And so, yes, absolutely ask prep permission first before you purchase anything. We have the prep guy right here. Okay, so we updated the language of the advanced payment form, so it no longer says capital advance payments. You're gonna use the same form to request an advance payment, whether it's an operating grant or a capital grant. We've just had an increase in funding, and so it didn't make sense now to have different forms for different funding sources. So just for your ease of use, the form now says advanced payment form, you can use it for all grants. But that being said, we also, if you've been around for a long time,
Oh, yeah.
Donna, we've removed the initial payment option. I have not seen an initial payment request come through for years. And so we just wanted to take that out so it's not confusing. An initial payment really only applied to operating grants, and it was a 25% lump sum on an operating grant that you could get paid upfront that you then had to reconcile against.
Yeah, that option.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is probably the part that everybody's gonna be the most excited for, so. Cost share changes, we have updated the limit for cost share from $50,000 per landowner per fiscal year to $100,000 per landowner per fiscal year. And that goes into effect again, July 1st.
And that's cumulative projects, because I know we had some that were like, they could be an NRI, but it also was a shellfish, and then it's like, wait, we already gave them the $50,000 one, you can't give them the other one too.
Exactly, that's across all programs, yep. So per landowner, no matter if they're doing an NRI, if they're doing a sustainable farms and fields across all programs, so $100,000 per fiscal year.
Irrigation efficiency program.
No. I think so. There's always an exception, I feel like irrigation is always its own beast, and prep is always its own.
Yeah.
But no, irrigation will still remain separate. Those projects are just, they're different than our normal cost share sector. And then, we also heard feedback on the landowner labor rate, and so currently it's $22 per hour. Starting July 1st, it'll go up to $25 an hour. So those are the two biggest changes in cost share, upping those rates.
Courtney, we have a question kind of going back to the closeout procedures for year end online. Sarah Jones is asking, how do you want us to communicate if we're not going to spend all of our funds? The returned funds form has been disabled for a while.
That's correct. No, that's a good question. So, the return funds form, the operating and capital has been disabled. We disabled it at the beginning of May, because at this point, at the beginning of May, we're not able to turn the funding around and get it back out to districts. So any funds that are returned at this point will have to be returned on the closeout form. And then if it's over $1,000, there's a place that you'll have to write an explanation as to why.
So going back to the landowner rate, so I thought you said that the board approves a landowner rate, but then you're saying it's not over 25 after the landowner labor rate, not over $25 an hour. Is that
Right, they can approve a rate up to SCC maximum. Yeah,
$25.
up to $25, yes. And that's the thing with your cost share resolution rate. We allow you to reimburse the landowner up to 100%.
Okay,
But there are many boards that set it at 75%.
Okay.
It's your board's comfort, and same with the landowner labor rate.
okay,
Any amount up to 25% or $25.
okay, good,
And minors are always at minimum wage.
okay.
Does that have to be stated in the resolution? Of the minors?
No. Because that's just commission policy, it's in the procedure manual. Okay, so we also added a brand new chapter. We have added a new chapter to the grants procedure manual in the 15 years that I have been here. So we have a shiny new chapter all about DIP. So district implemented projects. This year was kind of our test year for DIPs. It was only allowed on a couple programs. Next biennium, starting July 1st, we're gonna open it up to allow it on almost every program. Not crap. All irrigation. The biggest changes that you're gonna see, and I'm sorry, I'm looking back and forth between this fiscal year and the start of next biennium, but the biggest changes you're gonna see next biennium for DIP is that we're going to be able to reimburse for any staff time spent directly implementing the project monthly.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you'll be able to take overhead on those hours. Thank you for that. It's not just me. No, the regional managers and us worked really hard to come up with a good system that we could make work. It actually helps us too, because, you know, when we have to hold all the time sheets and hours, all of the costs, it makes those vouchers giant too, rather than just reimbursing monthly. So it's a way for everyone. Okay, so in addition to that, all of your project costs for DIP only are going to be reimbursed monthly as well. That's so much applause. With the caveat, so we're going out on a limb here, but we're very excited for all these projects. We have so much money that we want you guys to get reimbursed. Cash flow is a serious issue. We understand that. And so by allowing you guys to be reimbursed monthly for both the TA and project costs, we hope, you know, that will alleviate pressure on you guys. But also the projects must be finished. So if we have a dip and it's not reimbursed, or we reimbursed it already, but it's not finished by the end of the biennium, your regional managers will work with you, and going forward, that might not be an option. So just remember this, we're testing this biennium to see how it goes. So those are the major updates to the procedure manual for going into effect July 1st. I'm just gonna run down the differences between cost share and DIP because they are very different and they cannot be used interchangeably. You pick one path or you pick the other. So cost share, the way it works, this is our normal project structure. So the district is awarded funds from SCC. And then the district allocates those to the landowner. The landowner is responsible for the project. They go out, they hire the contractor, they install the BMP, they complete everything. The district ensures the BMPs have been implemented, and then they get reimbursed. That's the normal cost share structure. It's open to all districts and counties. Everybody can use the cost share structure. And again, for the next biennium, $100,000 will be the maximum. So the districts, you guys are required for cost share to use the contract for cost share printed from CPDS. No changes can be made to SCC's cost share contract. It was specifically written for us by our Attorney General, and that's what we use. So when you request reimbursement for cost share, it comes with the cultural resources form, comes with the contract for cost share. It comes with the appendix B, which is the cost share detail receipt form, and you're gonna do one of those for every BMP. Because we award funds on a BMP basis. Not a project basis, but a BMP basis. So every one of those BMPs will have its own cost share detail receipt form. And then you'll include all of the receipts for each of those BMPs.
I understand that. However, when you have a big project and a contractor and they lump everything together, it is very hard to tell what is the pipeline and what was, you know, the waste transfer and what was part of something else when it's all one giant invoice. You're like, it's much easier to say, it's just the 50,000 in there. It's like, you know.
I know, and I do understand that, but we got audited a couple years ago. And it was very apparent that they were looking at our cost share and what we awarded. And there were a couple of times where we did have that one BMP, that one appendix B for all of the BMPs. And we got a lot of questions on it. And so it's really important for us because in our programmatic guidelines, in our rules with the auditors, you know, seeing if we're following, we need to be sure that we clearly identify, we awarded this BMP at this dollar, this one at this dollar, and we did not exceed those maximums.
Is there a way to do a budget amendment if one is going under and one is going over? Because they lump two things together and I'm like trying to break them out, you know?
Yeah, you know, we try and be flexible as much as we can because we know, and in this climate, prices are volatile. So we ask you to work with your regional manager. We can always adjust. CPDS is the key.
Okay,
But it's important to go through your regional manager first so that they know what's happening on that project. They can guide you through the steps to reallocate those funds, reprint the funding page and have each party sign it.
okay.
So it's doable, you know, it's not best practice. We don't want to do it every time, but we definitely have a way to do that.
Okay.
Okay, you guys get the project? Dips. So the most important part to remember about dips is there is no cost share aspect with the landowner. The district takes all responsibility for a district implemented project. So you guys are on the hook for all of prevailing wage, bidding, all of that stuff. So just remember that. Shauna likes to say there's lots of flavors of dips, and that is true. There's a district implemented project with a single landowner, district implemented project, multiple landowners. There's dips with outside organizations too. So there's lots of different types of dips that you can do. Like I said, just remember the landowners, there is no reimbursement to them. They don't pay for anything. The district pays for everything.
So when it says including divided by prevailing wage, that's if we're using our own staff as well.
So if you're using your own staff, you don't, there's no prevailing wage requirement. This will be if you're engaging with a contractor, but it's also circumstance dependent.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You can go to the next one. So SCC has provided a template for districts to use if they would like. It's on our website. The regional managers can help you with it as well. You don't have to use it, you can have your own. One of the important things to remember is cost shares are open to counties and districts. The dip option is only open to conservation districts. So the county don't have to. Currently. So, okay,
You can't do cost share with like tribes?
Oh, yeah, yes, you can.
Oh.
I'm talking about
You can't do grants.
the county, like the VSP grants.
Oh,
If it's just the county that's not working with the CD,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't an option.
Okay.
That structure, project structure. Okay. Next one. So me and Brian are gonna cover CPDS a little more generally, here in a little bit, but I just wanted to show you the most important thing that we are looking at when we get your cost share or your district implemented projects. When they're finished, these 3 things need to be filled out before we can reimburse you. So the first one is the actual implementation efforts. The second one is your after photo. And then your third one is the completion date. And it's all on one tab. It's on the CPDS closeout tab. And so that tab has to be completed for each BMP before we can reimburse you for a cost share or a DIP project. Yeah.
Are you gonna hit on, DIP and CPDS in this?
As far as what's required,
yeah.
that input,
Yeah.
we can touch on that when me and Brian do the CPDS piece. Yeah. Okay, so this is just a reminder, please check your vouchers for accuracy. So not only on your end, when you are doing them, please check your comp rates, make sure there's no missing timesheets. But also on our end, when we send those A19 and spreadsheets back to you, please look at them. Because there are some of these grants that have 15 outcomes. There's some other grants that have 25. And it's really important because, you know, we make mistakes too. So if we didn't code something to the right outcome for you, please let us know. That's why we ask you to look at that budget spreadsheet. Make sure we have all your things categorized correctly. Does anybody have any questions on anything I've covered so far? I'm gonna come back, but we're tag teaming this, so Kate's gonna come up. Yeah,
I'm not gonna say question, just back on the district, because some like emotional, when we kind of opened it up to new programs as well, we updated the DIP for the cost share decision tree. That's on our website as well, if you're kind of. DIP should we go cost share, that's all been updated, we've taken things we've learned over the last year and updated it a bit as well, so there'll be a new decision tree available as well, if you're considering sure your best route for a project.
yes, and once you pick your path, if you decide this is gonna be a DIP or you decide this is gonna be a cost share, that's the way you have to go.
And that's the individual project as opposed to the grant. The grant can be
Yeah.
combined.
Yeah,
Because I know we had one that was a county land owner, and so we ended up managing the project itself on the family recovery monies.
yeah,
And so I guess that Frank wanted to know what needed to be put in there that was different than regular cost there as far as the, attachment paperwork, because the contract, obviously, we can have one. So what kind of sign off do we need to provide for those for our own? Is it the same like sign off form type of thing? Because we've never done our own project before. This is like new to us. We obviously need the governor's, whatever thing, the cultural resource one. And some other stuff, but he's like, I'll just do the same thing as we did, and they'll cover for the wrong.
that's true. Okay, so there's a couple of questions in there. So the first one, for each of our grants, we allow you the flexibility to choose each project, how you want to do it. So if you want to do one as a DIP, and then you have another landowner who would rather do the traditional cost share method, you can intermix both of those within a grant. But once you've picked, you know, landowner A wants to do a DIP or a cost share, and then landowner B, we're gonna take this over, we're gonna do it to implement a project. It's really important to stay because they're very different, right? So we can't switch in the middle.
Yeah, I know, and lots of times they're like, I want to have a contractor, but I want to do this part myself. They're like. People don't do that.
Yeah, and then, for the second part of your question, for DIPs, you have to have a landowner agreement, so a district landowner agreement. you have to have, the cultural resources compliance statement form, and you have to have all of the receipts for this biennium.
Another question, Karen.
I just want to add a clarifier, this is Charlotte, where I work in the back of the room. When it comes to the choice between, do you go cost share or do you go with dip? It's not the landowner's choice. It's the business choice. Right, because you all know where is it gonna be more cost effective for me to take this project on as a district. And where that project is more public benefit, very little private landowner benefit tends to be the place where that kind of tips the point, right? Riparian buffers is a really good example of that, and landowners are like, I'm gonna give up my land to do that, I don't wanna do cost share. A lot of districts take on riparian buffers as a dip. But if you're building a watering trough, if you're building a fence, if you're building an operation. That's where the tipping point is gonna go back to the cost share, right? Because you're actually adding some value and benefit to that landowner's property. So there, you heard the decision tree mentioned earlier. I really encourage you to pull that up on your webpage and chat with your regional manager about where that tipping point is for your district. Because it's not a landowner's choice, it's a district. I just wanted to add a little more context to that, Courtney. Thank you for letting me interject.
Okay. So this is how to get vouchers paid out quicker, and reduce the amount of time that I have to bug you and wait for you to respond and stuff like that. So the first one, signatures and dates. They can be easily overlooked, especially if you're signing 100 things, so just double checking that they're both there. And then including all backup as needed. So we don't need anything excess, only what you're actually vouchering reimbursement for.
We're having a hard time hearing online. Can you speak up a little bit, or we could use the mic?
Okay. I'll try, yeah.
Outdoor voice speaking. Outdoor
And
voices.
then double checking your map, especially on the detail page. It's easy to update it, but then again, it's reaching out to you, waiting for you to respond, to confirm before I edit anything and pay it out. And then using current submitted composite rates, so checking every month that you're using the latest one. Making sure charges are eligible and pre-approved for your grant as well. Checking the procedure manual and programmatic guidelines for that. And also checking that there's enough money left in your outcome. You don't want any surprises, so checking those A19s and budget spreadsheets as we send them out. Every voucher, they get automatically sent to you. And then clearly identifying outcome for each charge as well. Sometimes, like for example, with shellfish, there can be a lot of outcomes. And it can jump from 1 to 5 to 11. Just having that outlined can be helpful for timesheets and stuff like that. And then sending vouchers with a clear subject line to our grants inbox. Sometimes we get them and there's no subject line. We're obviously going to open them, but it's helpful for us filing it and making sure we all get to see it. If it does have that subject line in it. Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
And I probably should have made the font bigger. I want to come side by side, because there are some things that are required for both. So I'll just quickly go through, because I think some of them covered, but it's also on this form that I'll mention at the end. So cost share, covering every page of the contract is really important. Sometimes I won't see page 2, which has the funding table, which obviously we need. So just making sure we have every page of that signed and dated by the landowner as well. And correct funding tables for the BMPs. And then cultural resource statement we need for both DIP and cost share per landowner. And if you're requesting reimbursement for landowner time, then having their timesheet essentially also signed and dated, which I know can be annoying to go back and get. So just making sure you have that from the start. And the appendix B for each BMP also. And the closeout tab for CPDS, the photos and the completion dates. And I didn't mention implementation measure. That's the same for DIP as well. And invoices listed, same for DIP. And double checking, all charges are dated for after the project was approved. Really important, you don't want to be spending money before you're actually able to get reimbursed for it. And then sending in one payment request when the project is completed, unless it is partial payment, and having that partial payment form. And then the final payment form when you're finished with it. And at the end is when you add the completion dates and the last signatures on the contract. And for DIP, the landowner agreement, also signed and dated, cultural resource compliance statement. And what's important for this third one, having it outlined how many landowners for the DIP, because if it's a multi-landowner DIP, it's helpful to have that noted and including their CPDS numbers so that I can check that it's completed in CPDS. Sometimes we have the names, but we don't have the CPDS numbers, so then I have to bug you and wait for you to respond as well. And then again, including staff timesheets, if they're directly implementing the project. We're not allowing overhead right now, but that's gonna change really soon. And again, including the invoices and splitting them between landowners, if one invoice is used for multiple landowners, that's helpful to make clear. Double checking the available outcome balance as well. And again, sending in one payment request, so, or partial payment, but then in the new biennium, you can do it monthly, so that shouldn't really be a problem for too much longer. And then I have a checklist for issues that delay voucher payments and cost share payments. And then SIP bathroom checklist, and cost share bathroom checklist. I didn't include a top 10 issues for DIP because there's less to it. And I thought that just having the checklist might just be easier to fit it all on one page. So you didn't get that, we have extra you can take with you. Yeah.
I think this part of it though, this DIP vouchering checklist and this DIP and the cost share vouchering checklist is a good checklist to give to your technician. So that when they hand you the paperwork, they have a checklist and say, okay, here's the, filter resource form, here's the contract, you have everything that you need, so you vouch for it, they have that same checklist. For that.
Come on, go.
So I'm gonna talk about VSP, and I know that, most of you, well, maybe a lot of you do VSP, and you can sort this, I thought it would be helpful for you all to hear what's changing, just so that you know what the counties are gonna need going forward. So some of the contract changes, we're increasing overhead to 25%. And like Courtney mentioned, we're doing electronic signatures. Our policy says we're using Adobe Sign, so any contracts that I issue will be via Adobe Sign. But we can also still do wet signatures as well, if that's easier for people. We need to have comp rate forms for all staff, including counties, which has not been happening in the past. So that's gonna be a requirement going forward, just so you all know. In case I don't know, counties have questions, maybe they might direct them at you guys on how to do it, because a lot of them don't submit rate forms. They might not have done it in the past, so it might be new to them, but it'll just make it easier for me going forward to have everybody giving me the same thing. Like Courtney mentioned, we are allowing debts with VSP. We're on the budget that you all submit or that the county submits. I want to have everyone include, if you think you're gonna do cost share or if you think you're gonna do DIP, I'd like there to be a line item in the budget that identifies that. And it doesn't, you don't have to stick to those numbers. If the numbers change going forward, that's fine. It's more as a way for me to know that you're planning on doing this so that we can make sure that you have the right training to avoid problems with vouchering and billing and the process down the line. The other thing in the contract, the last page of the contract that goes out to the county is that responsible parties form that they need to fill out and submit, which will probably be a county issue, but depending on how the county and the CDs have their agreement set up, it could identify somebody here as a responsible party. And then the last thing that's changing is there's monitoring plan language in the contracts. And I don't know, again, that'll probably be more of a county issue, but it might be questions come up, how to do that. What's required, and that would be good to talk to Bill or the regional managers for details on that. It's still all being worked out. So the things, just a really quick recap, the things that will need to be sent in will be a budget. I'll need a copy of the executed county and CD subcontract if they work with you all on their VSP programs. And then that appendix D that tells me who the responsible parties are. So some of the billing changes, and a lot of these Courtney already talked about, the like the equipment, but training expenses in the past with VSP were limited to $1,500. That went up to $2,000. And again, I'm gonna ask if that's included as a budget line item because it'll help me track when you hit that cap during the fiscal year. We haven't asked for that in the past, so it'll make it a lot easier. And we are gonna include travel related items with training. We weren't allowing that in the past, which was very confusing, I think, for a lot of people. So we're really, the goal is to make it more aligned with the contract manual.
Does the training still need to be pre-approved?
Yes, it needs, so you would just send an email to me and it needs to also be approved by your work group. Pretty much everything with VSP has to go through your work group. It's, you could give feedback to Bill. I don't, I'm not the VSP expert, the way Bill is, so I don't know, you know, what goes into those decisions and what VSP ledge language requires or doesn't require. It's just what I'm operating on, so.
Don't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, absolutely. I just know, I haven't been here long enough to know all the background with VSP and what, where the processes were set up in the past, so.
Yeah, I get that. Thank you.
I was just trying to make it match more with whatever all the other programs did with travel and training, because it was so different. And it was causing a lot of confusion, both for me and for you and for the counties on what could happen with travel and training. And then the equipment, $2,000, one item, like what Courtney already said. The other thing that's not on here that I just wanted to remind people is because these are contracts, they have different inform stack. All the forms are different, like there's grant closeout forms and grant return funds forms, but if you go into the VSP or if you need me to send you links to these forms, there's contract forms that are separate. So if you need to send in your closeout forms or if the county does it, I'll let them know. But they're two separate forms. So it can get confusing when I have to look for things and they're not, if it's not identified as contract versus grant, it goes to the wrong place in our internal system, so. That's
And on our website, there's two different tabs. One is a grant tab, and that's where the grant forms are. And there's a tab for contract, and that's where all the contracting forms are. So if you ever don't know where it is, they're clearly separated on the SCC website.
Yeah. And the VSP website was just totally overhauled, and so I don't even know where things are there yet. I haven't even, it just happened this week, I think, but it's a line. So everything should be on the VSP website as well. So, and then getting back, so this last slide, I just wanted to go over what you were asking about essentially is what approvals, because it seems to come up a lot as well. So prior approval, you need to send me an email for training and conferences, and that's just an email to me. And then for equipment, there is a VSP equipment form that's separate from the other equipment form, and that's on the VSP website. And that's because that gets routed to me and to Bill Eller. And then just think of everything with VSP as needing work group approval is kind of the easiest way to do it. Any cost share dip, training, equipment, it should all go to the VSP work group. And any request to us for approval, we're gonna need to see that it went to the work group for approval before that. And that's pretty much it, other than this last point. And I don't want to talk too much about dip because it's totally new to me. I've not had dip come up much yet, other than trying to troubleshoot where things like I get a voucher and I try to figure out, well, what does this expense go to when it doesn't go to a cost share? Just a reminder that any on the ground work with VSP should be associated with cost share, or it should be a dip going forward, starting July 1. Before July 1, it should only have been cost share. There was no other option to do any on the ground work with VSP. And that's just something that's come up. And we've worked with counties to kind of, after the fact, resolve some issues that have come up when I've seen expenses for things that were clearly for a project that we didn't have any cost share information for. So just keep that in mind. Anything that's happening on the ground should be one of those two project types. And I think that's it.
All right, so now I am going to have some travel reminders. It's kind of awesome. We're all able to travel more with everything going on. So I'm here to help remind you of some stuff we've noticed on our vouchers. All lodging is subject to per diem, and we have a state per diem map that's on the OFM website. And something that's kind of easy to remember, like, because there's times where like you'll have employees who will travel around to different counties, and where you lay your head at night, that's where the per diem, that's the per diem you go by. And if you don't have an overnight travel, an employee can still get per diem as long as they're in travel status for at least 11 hours. And part of the per diem on lodging, they add in taxes, and the taxes aren't part of per diem, like they don't make the per diem go over, but resort fees do. So if there's a resort fee on a lodging, like $10, and your lodging rate is $98, you are over per diem on that lodging. And then I have some links. You can find per diem rates for like, especially like in-state or out of state on the GSA website or on the OFM website. And something also that I've noticed on vouchers with out of state travel, if you go, like you have Bend, and it's $64 for meals and incidentals, and the breakout is like, you know, $14, $16, $29, but then there's that $5 that's hanging out. That doesn't, it's not part of the total, like $64. And so then your employee is getting paid less than per diem. And so that instead of like figuring out the percentages, you can go to the per diem app and look at like the 69 per diem, and those are the breakouts you use for out of state travel.
So we can go over the amount that's listed on it, because we always just say, sorry, you don't get $5 under it.
Yeah, so you can, yeah, so if it's like, if you go to Bend, or let's say you can spend that $69, because you'll miss that $5 that you can get reimbursed for, so then you just go to that 69 right here.
Okay.
And then just use those rates, and then that's what your employees will get reimbursed for that. Those, yeah, so then you can get that $5.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're like,
Yeah, and then like, if you have an employee that travels, you know, you're missing out on that.
Yeah.
$5 adds up, so. Yeah.
And maybe you're gonna get to this, but are these rates up to, and we include receipts?
For
Or
per
we
diem,
just-
you don't need receipt, like for meals, you don't need receipts, you need the A20, which is on the next slide.
Okay,
So just have, if you have the A20 form filled out, right there, then that's what you need.
gotcha.
Yes. And so it is required by the state county manual and our grants and contracts manual that the H20 that you fill out for travel has start and end times. And that's been like, that's held up a lot of my vouchers at least.
not having the start and end times in those to determine like if employees get breakfast, lunch and dinner. And something else that's been holding up vouchers is having signatures in both of those places, so employee signature and supervisor signature. And it is required by our grantee contract manual that each district have a policy in place establishing like meal periods and meal times for breakfast, lunch and dinner. And mileage, so the mileage rate has been changing more often just with increased costs. And the mileage rate includes the wear and tear of the vehicle, mileage and insurance. The rate, we don't really have, like even as a state, any like say in the mileage rate, it's set federally, so when it changes federally, then the state also changes it. And when the OFM kind of changes it based on that, then we'll let districts know that the mileage rate has changed. Currently it's at 0.655 cents per mile. But if you ever run into a situation where you need to charge for past mileage rate, if you go to OFM, their past rates are listed down below, so then you can find past rates to make sure that you have the correct rate.
State was a little bit late in updating it to January. It was like
Yeah,
halfway through the
it's-
month and I'm going,
I think it's because there's just so much like chaos.
yeah.
Yeah. A lot, has to use. Okay, so for light refreshments, you have to show that it's an integral part of like your meeting or whatever you need coffee and light refreshments for. Districts are required to have a policy in place for light refreshments. And requirements, you need to have a receipt for, whatever you purchase. You need a list of attendees, a copy of an agenda, and a pre-approval form that must be signed prior to the meeting or whatever you have in place for light refreshments. And so it's non-alcoholic beverages, and it's not anything, I consider it not anything like really like substantial, like not a meal, so no pizza sandwiches, but like fruit or granola bars or juice or anything of that sort.
I have a question there.
Yes.
So, providing light refreshments, say at our plant sale, we're not gonna have an agenda, you know what I mean, that type of thing, so what should we put in place of that
They're not,
for like our volunteers?
yeah. It's not allowable.
Oh,
It's it.
there's no light refreshments allowed for our plant sale volunteers?
No, the state is extremely strict on this. It has to be a meeting.
A what?
It has to be a meeting.
A meeting.
It has to have with a meeting agenda. It has to have a copy of that agenda. It has to have the district. It has to have all of those 4 things in order to have that. If you're gonna do water or stuff, I don't know, use your overhead would be a better use of.
Don't have any requests.
Everything falls on overhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think it might be, that's only for requesting reimbursement from the commission, right?
Yeah.
If we're taking money out of our plant sale pocket, then we can't have water.
Yes, this is only for,
District fund.
yeah, this is only for reimbursement through your SCC grant.
Okay.
And that's just, the state is very particular on this subject,
But including implementation, right?
including your implementation grant, you have to follow these. The law that outlines it, so.
And my things are kind of self-explanatory, like showing that the integral part of the, like, a meeting, but you still have to be like, it takes time to have snacks instead of like employees going out and getting snacks and coming back, like it's better time management. Yes.
But basic allocation funding, that's fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anything that's not reimbursable.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Does everybody know what an allocation is?
Okay, sure, okay.
Your basic allocation, you have an option going forward, so, on your implementation grant, you are given, let's say $100,000. You have the option to take $12,500 in a basic allocation payment. It'll be your first payment on your implementation grant. When you're filling out that implementation addendum, there's a box that you will check that says you want the basic allocation payment and the amount, so any amount up to 12,500. It's a direct payment to the district and you can use it as you please. You get $1,000 for it, you know, $1,000 for it, you'll claim reimbursement. So it's 12,500 to the district for general spending.
So I guess it goes without saying, but you get the prior approval, you attach that. to your
Yes,
voucher?
yes. Very important. Before Brian and I start the next phase, where we're gonna kind of run through some CPDS, dip with CPDS. Does anybody have any overall questions, comments? Anything on the grant before, or CPDS, what do you want to be covered?
Is there a possibility that we should get a little more information on the addenda? Things like that would come out of the email that says you were awarded this, the start date, the end date, the source of the fund, whether it's operations or capital, or if it does have any federal. It's really hard to find that information if you don't receive the email.
Okay, so on the award notification or on the
On the actual addenda, the document that says this is what you've been awarded for your grant.
so
That information is
because
typically
it's
not.
a form stack form that you fill out once we send, so I send you an award notification that says, this is what you've been awarded, and I will put operating or capital fund.
Which I appreciated, thank you. I don't have to ask you then.
So I did start adding that to the award notification, but you won't see that on the addendum. Let me noodle on that and see if I can work with the addendum, but you fill out that form, so. Let me think
Yeah,
about
and if
that.
I don't fill it out, then I don't really know. And I'm the one that has to fix it, you know?
Yeah, let me think about how we can include that. I can write it on the physical addendum when I sign it and send it back to you.
So is form stack forever or can it be adjusted?
We can always adjust the forms on form stack, but form stack is staying for the current duration. Yeah, well, let me think about that. On every other grant besides your general fund, so your operating grants, so the commission's already decided, right? Implementation, engineering, prep, and irrigation. All four of those have already been published. You guys should already have seen how much money you're getting for FY 24. If you don't know, you can see me afterwards, I can tell you. Those four, you will submit your addendums by the end of June or July. You already have those numbers. Anything else will come directly from a committee, like Shellfish or something like that, and you will get an award notification from me.
Say this for again, implementation.
Prep, implementation,
Yeah.
engineering, irrigation.
Yeah, so I only found the implementation and prep when I was looking at the district digest. And I clicked on something that worksheet. I don't know that I got an email with that.
You won't have gotten a direct email yet. You will soon. Sarah will be sending out the pre-authorization to spend memo. So pre-authorization to incur expenses as of July 1st, and you will get the table that comes with it. The table.
I saw the table, but I just stumbled on it.
Okay. The table will be up in the Financial Times newsletter next week. But it's public, it's the commission meeting packet has it also, but I have it. I can show you your numbers. Okay. Your RMs have it.
And that's gonna include both operating and capital funds.
It's only gonna include those 4 grant programs.
Okay.
Everything else is decided by a committee, right? So the Shellfish Committee, SRF, Sustainable Farms and Fields, RCCC, they all are decided.
Okay.
And then you'll get an award notification from me.
Courtney, with our triple P, we submitted an addendum or a budget amendment to move funds between tasks, and I haven't heard back, which is fine.
Yeah.
But we've proceeded as if it's been approved. And now that some of our costs are more final, I'm realizing we're gonna have like a little variance, you know, like within 10% between, I guess, outcomes that we'll need to do another amendment to finalize it, basically, is that there's no wiggle room between, like, if you go over or under 10% within outcome, don't worry about it.
Most federal grants
Yeah,
allow you
no.
to 10%.
There's not any wiggle room in that sense, but, it just depends too, for you guys, the way your grant is structured.
Yeah,
Is all, you guys have a giant article P program. Some of the article Ps, they can't do budget revisions because they were given one outcome specifically to purchase plant. And then in the next phase, the next RFP came out, and then you were able to get another allocation. So you can't move between those different funding ones. You guys have a big multiple outcomes on your expansion, right?
okay, right.
So it'll be approved. I just haven't got
Okay, okay, perfect. That's no problem.
it.
No problem. I wasn't trying to call you out.
Does anybody else have any other questions they want to go over before we jump to CPDS? Does anybody have not had experience with CPDS? So quite a few. So we're gonna do a brief overview, and then because I wanted to include it here because there are pieces that touch the financial aspect. So I want you guys to get an overview and be able to see it, and then I'm gonna walk you through how to pull a contract correctly, a cost share contract out of CPDS. So if you have questions, you know how to do it, how the funding is all in there. And then we'll cover it like that.
Do we have access to it? I've never had access.
Everybody can have access to CPDS. You can email me or Brian, either one of us can create you an account. We have a recorded word, we have recorded trainings that'll walk through each tab and how to do it. And we get a lot of requests to unlock accounts too.
So I'm gonna, for those of you especially that haven't been into the system, 20 minutes,
Yep.
I'll take 5 real quick. Part of what we get with CPDS is, I don't understand this software. It's because you don't understand where we came from and what it's trying to do. And so history is important because it tells us how things are today. And I usually use slides, but I'll just do this from rote. Prep in our commission started in about 1999. No database, probably all spreadsheets. Program manager was an engineer. Early 2000s, I mean, incredible growth in the program. 0 to 800 projects in 4 years. And I need to track where stuff was going. At the same time, RCO was in its infancy, doing salmon grants, needing to track their money. WDFW was getting more into the business, doing habitat permits. And we were all kind of putting money forward through the legislature for a database to track these things. And the legislature actually listened and awarded money to each agency with the idea that it would all be one database. Well, that fell apart really quickly because each database had different needs. And so we did a request for proposal, early 2000s, ended up starting the work in 2006-ish. And by 2008 had a product. And if you are old enough to know, in the mid 2000s, we were using Ask Jeeves and Hotbot, and your operating system was Microsoft Vista. So tell me how that all worked. But it was a cloud-based system before there was cloud. So it was really early. For the most part, it worked for the way it was built, but it was built very much with a commission picture. We have programs that we're funneling money out for. And the other end of needing district users to input information was not considered in the build. And so it was very, very unclear how the workflow happened, and good software is always built around workflows. My wife works in healthcare. They have hundreds of workflows in a healthcare information system, depending on who the user is and their role and what's going on. And that's the only way they work, because the workflow follows what the people actually do. Fast forward to 2014, late 2014, I arrived, and one of my first assignments was to do a report to FSA about the correct work that had been done. I said, great, we have a database. I'm a database guy. I can figure this out. I get in and I start looking for riparian forest buffer. And I get a number back about how many I thought had been done in 2 years. I go, that's not nearly enough. There's no way that's right. So I figured out the way to search for something shorter than riparian in the practice name. So I did RIP / and searched for everything that started with RIP. And I got a whole ton of other lists. And when I started really digging in to print out everything that looked like that, there were 130 different practice names that characterized the riparian buffer. I said, this is nuts. I'm trying to get data out from unstructured text data that goes in. How do I know what's what, even in a structured field? Maybe this practice type over here, which looks like an NRCS number, is a better thing to use. Print out all those. Well, I've got 2 391s. One was cover crop and one was riparian forest buffer. I go, how can the same thing have 2 numbers? And there's 191A or 391A. What does that look like? So the whole thing, from a reporting standpoint, we needed a lot of help. And then the database was based on Microsoft. There were 2 different standards for how cloud databases were being administered. Google was coming up to speed. Microsoft was off doing its own thing, and there was an international standard, and they made a turn and came back to the international standard. Every time they made a turn, our security would break, and we'd have to scramble to fix everybody's passwords. And it was causing a lot of issues. It was causing a lot of latency. And so in 2016, we sat down with the vendor and said, what is going on? He said, well, technology has changed. It's been 10 years roughly. Technology changes. How cloud databases handle data is different. What's your recommendation? We recommend a recode. And I said to the boss at the time, I go, I do not want to recode and get the mess that I have now on the report side. We've got to restructure this. And oh, by the way, the sense from the district users, we had a 30-page specific manual about how to get data into the thing so that we can get it funded. So we had a meeting in Ellensburg with users and listened to the frustrations, and kind of what came out in the first couple of hours was workflow. There was no workflow for the district users to follow. It didn't follow the way the districts did their business. And that's going to break the data going in. And I knew what the issues were on the reporting side. And so we had a conversation for the rest of the day about the workflow. And we came down to and kind of honed in finally on like the 90% case of how districts do their workflow, and then built the software around that. So if there is something we want the system to do that doesn't fit that workflow, it's not going to work. It's like using a spreadsheet to write a letter. It ain't going to work because it's not built around that kind of workflow. However, if we're doing projects in the traditional, and we can't afford to code for everything people do, all the variations. If you're doing a project in the traditional workflow of talking to a landowner, could be 2 hours, 2 minutes as they walked in the door, could be 2 years if you've been having coffee with them. You're finding out about what happens about their property, and we're characterizing that property. We're finding out about the resources of that property. We're prescribing BMPs to address those resource concerns. And finally, we're paying for them, preferably with easy money rather than hard money. And then because we asked for a certain color of money, now we need more information about that color of money. So for PrEP, my program, I needed the FSA contract number, I need the contract date. So we asked for the information in the order it's being used or needed. And then finally, we spend the money and then we go to close it out and voucher. So that's what you see when you open CPDS. You see a tab, participant. You see a tab, property. You see a tab, resource concerns. And we step through those. Do you have to do it all at once? Ideally not, because what we heard was this happens over years or months. Yes, you do get somebody coming in to say, I want to participate in that program. I heard about it, or I was at an outreach event or something like that. Yes, you do. And then you start to kind of say, okay, let's back up a minute. Let's find out, who are you? Where are you? What are the issues? And we do have to go through and enter everything at once to get them going. But in general, it shouldn't be that way. The other thing is, at least from a reporting standpoint, how much did we do this piece of ground? We had a landowner that it was, stop. Landowners administered multiple properties, and that changes through time. And that's okay, because if they're contracting down the road to manage that field and BMPs get put in, now we get somebody else, the owner says, oh, now I want to farm it. We don't lose all the information that happened on that piece of ground. We change the association with a new landowner. And now we can still say, what happened on this piece of ground? What are the resource concerns? And we don't have to start over with a new record. So we can maintain continuity through time. We can look at projects that need funding, and maybe we've got this one, this BMP resource concern queued for a certain practice. Oh, here comes this funding source. It'll pay for that practice. We'll go this way. We don't have to decide the funding source. Put in the needs. It really helps us characterize the needs that are out there, especially when we see projects under development, and we get asked, how much money does the commission need to get this work done? We could theoretically, if it was complete, go into the database and say, we have this many projects with this resource concern that are under development, and here's the proposed cost. That people are sitting waiting to put the right color money in. So it could be an even more powerful tool than it is based on what gets put in. The other thing is that we now, and a frustration of folks is, we have to have all these fields required in this tab before it turns on this tab. I want to go way down here. It's like, well, part of that is because when I was querying in the old system, I would find 5,000 records, of which 2,800 are null. Like, that doesn't help me interpret the data that's in there, because the databases have two functions. Data in to store and maintain and archive, data out to ask questions and answer questions. And if it's not working on one end and it's not working on the other end, it's pretty well broken. Which is why we did a recode in 2018 that we went live with, talking to technicians who are the primary enterers that work in that workflow. It works really well for them. Talking to people that try to use a different workflow, it doesn't work well. We add on, we enhance as we go through time. We now have a multi-BMP landowner module, because I now want to do 10 stormwater ponds in this neighborhood with this color of money. So now I can go to the funding source and say, I'm going to use this color of money, 1,500 BMP, and now I want to see how many landowners. I want to find my landowners that I know are already in the system and assign that BMP to them, so I don't have to go landowner by landowner. That's fine. The data structure is still the same underneath. It's just a way of accessing and inputting the data that changes. As we grow, not all of the programs and the constraints that get put on those programs are fitting that model. So we have to go in and look at the workflow and code in order to be able to incorporate that into the system. So it's always a lag behind, and it's always like a new program. I want this. I say, bring money. We can do it. Money and time. And oh, by the way, the legislature limits how much we can spend on IT per year. So we have to prioritize the enhancements that we want. And so that's kind of the background about why you see what you see. And I don't know where you wanted to go from here, Courtney, but hopefully it helps you understand when you get into the system and you get frustrated, drop back to that initial workflow, landowner, property, resource concerns, BMP money, and it'll help you get reoriented to what it's expecting. I don't know where you want to go.
Perfect, thank you. I'm gonna show them how to run a cost share contract, because this is one of the most common questions that I get all the time, is my funding isn't lining up correctly on page 2 of that contract for cost share. So So I know we're out of time, so I'm gonna just make this brief, but on the side, we have canned reports. So you can do the cost share application. It's always nerve-wracking when you're trying to do things live too, like, oh, please work. Okay, and it'll bring up a list of the conservation districts. Mine might be a little different than what you see because I'm an admin, so I see all projects. So you go to your district, you find the landowner that you're looking for. I'm gonna go Courtney Woods and fence. Because that's the BMP. If you have multiple BMPs, right here is an example of multiple ones, but you only want to pick 1 or 2 BMPs that you're going to include on this contract, you would just select which BMPs you want to show up. For this example, I'm just going to do the fence. And then you're going to apply it. It takes a second. Okay, it's there. I gotta move this. And configure. So then this brings you to how we assign that funding. So section A is the participant's contribution. If you have landowner match, this is where you're going to put that landowner match. If you have cost share from other sources in section B, this is where you would select it. And of course, I picked a simple one that I only have eligible SCC. So NRI is going to pay $50,000 on this practice. I will select that. If you select these out of order, if there was multiple lines and you picked up here SCC's contribution, it would put it in the wrong part of the table for you. So it's really important when you're selecting the funding sources that you put them in the right category. And then you hit run. And then you hope that the pop-up blocker doesn't stop the PDF from popping up. Which it probably will.
It looks like it might be trying to save in your file down below.
Oh, here it is. And that's how you run it. So it tells you that it's NRI. It gives you all the landowner information. This is just a test, so it doesn't tell you all the actual information. But you see, it tells you total project cost is $50,000. It's all coming from SCC. And it's really important that you pay attention when you're assigning those funding, because when we see the contract, we cannot pay any more than what is listed in the eligible SCC column. So this $50,000, that's the most that we can pay. That's the short, simple version on how to run a contract. It's a canned report. So literally it's just selecting the landowner, selecting the BMP, and selecting them in the right order to show up on the funding tab. Go back. Oh, I think it's right here. Okay. So I want to hit on what Josh asked earlier on DIPs. So there are 2 ways that you can enter DIP projects. You can enter them under the conservation district as a land under the conservation district with the property, or the preferred method is to put them under their own landowner. So if you're doing a DIP for this landowner, put it under that landowner name. If you're doing a DIP, with a public county, you can put it in under yours too. We have 2 methods. You can put them in either one and they'll both be acceptable.
If I can jump in, the reason the landowner specific method is preferred is because we are increasingly getting asked to show our results, our outcomes, that we're making a difference on resource conservation at a big scale. So the more we know about what happened where, the better we can extract that information and tell that story. If we just know that we spent 10 projects in the district, that may be 3 in one watershed and 7 in another. And we don't know when we measure resource conditions in a watershed, whether 3 made a difference or not, and we can't tell that story. So the location information, the more specific we can be, the better we can tell that story, and the better we can get funding moving ahead. We can show that and prove voluntary conservation works, as we've been saying for the last 20 years, give us more money, it works. We're gonna be in a much stronger position to continue to help.
Does anybody have any questions on anything?
So on the CPDS side, if we go with the preferred method, there's really no difference between setting up a call share and dip in the CPDS.
Correct.
Other than you don't have to, you don't go through the whole suite of workflow.
Right.
But if the landowner's already in there, you don't have to go through the entire workflow anyway. You have to go through the entire workflow only if you're creating the landowner from scratch.
And as Shauna says, there's multiple flavors of dip. Dips are cost shares on a specific piece of ground.
Yeah.
Really nice to know where that cost share and that specific piece of ground are.
And there's a multi-landowner tool,
Yeah.
that, we were out of time to touch on, but I have a whole webinar that we walk through it. I'm happy to walk through it with anybody. We have lots of, I just want to plug that we have lots of trainings online in the webinar. Trainings that walk you through CPDS, trainings that walk you through the cost share rule. We'll do another one pretty soon to go over all the new DIF rules for the next biennium, so we'll put that on the website. But that's a great resource. Webinars on our website. And it's not just financial, it is a lot of other information. Listening sessions are on there for different programs. We have extra handouts, and then last call, if anybody has any other questions for the financial staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.